glad you could join us on Wellness Talk Radio. I'm Chris Costello, and our guest today is Dr. Robert Butler. And Dr. Butler started one of the first departments of geriatric medicine in the country. He's widely regarded as the founder of geriatric medicine. He's a frequent advisor to the World Health Organization and founder of the International Longevity Center, whose mission it is to champion research and policy focused on helping our senior population. He's also author of The Longevity Prescription, The 8 Proven Keys to a Long, Healthy Life. Dr. Butler, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So the longevity prescription is seems to be very comprehensive. You talk a lot about the 8 things that you need for a long, healthy life. And I want to kind of go over those today, and if we could also talk about some of the things that are going on in our country with health right now.
Sure.
What's one of the first things that you need to focus on to have a long, healthy life?
Diet is certainly key. And there, we need to reduce the amount of calories we take in, and we have to greatly increase the number of fruits and vegetables we eat every day to 7 to 9. And you might say, how are you going to do that? Well, instead of a coffee break, you could have a banana break or an apple break. But we really do not eat enough colorful vegetables, which could make a huge difference in our longevity. We also need to supplement with vitamin D in particular.
And now some people also try to get their vitamin D from the sunshine. Do you recommend that?
The problem with that is in the winter people tend to stay indoors.
Mm-hmm.
And sunshine is important. But also we don't want to do it during the heat of the day either, the summer.
Right.
So you have to do it during the quieter time of the day. But we know from studies that actually people just don't get enough vitamin D.
Right, and we don't all live in California, do we?
No, we don't.
Now, you mentioned first right off the bat food, and one of the things we talk a lot about on Wellness Talk Radio with many different experts and physicians is food and nutrition and the current state of health in our country. I mean, we're looking at some really serious obesity rates.
Yeah, I've been horrified. I wrote a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is our key medical magazine a few years ago with others, in which we predicted we may lose life expectancy and that our children may wind up living less long than their parents. I'm so horrified when, as a doctor, I see 10-year-old children, 10-year-olds, obese with old-age diabetes. Can you imagine old-age diabetes at 10 years of age?
That is unbelievable. And what's going on with this? What do we do? Where do we start? That kind of thing. I mean, you're obviously...
Well, I think our lunchtime in our public and private schools, too, should be a teaching time to teach kids and to see that they get fruits and vegetables and not just pizza and hamburgers. I'm not against an occasional pizza and hamburger. What I'm saying, that should not be our main diet.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to eliminate trans fats. We have to control the amount of salt we eat. And by starting young, we develop their taste so that throughout life they're likely to be healthier.
And now, what do you think about this? Dr. Kessler's written The End of Overeating, and that's he talks a lot about these foods that many of our children are eating are very addictive, have addictive qualities. What do you think about that?
Well, part of the problem is economic, too, because a lot of poor families live in areas where they don't have access to the kinds of fruits and vegetables that those of us who are more fortunate have. And furthermore, you could get feeling very filled, by eating a hamburger and French fries, and it's cheaper than it is buying better food, unfortunately.
Right, and many families are living at real fast paces with both parents working, and they're just kind of scrambling and getting food on the way home and that kind of thing, too.
TV dinners and so forth.
So the nutrition aspect is really important.
And the economic aspect is important. We have to be thoughtful about that. And I would love to do what Norway did a number of years ago. When kids come to school, they get a good breakfast right at the school. Mm-hmm. And, our lunchtime could be better in America. Mm-hmm. So the things we could do that would not be expensive, but in the long run would save us because of the huge health costs. I mean, if you have kids already getting diabetes at 10, 12 years of age, that's a lifetime sentence and very expensive for all of us in this country.
And that must be really frustrating. I mean, here you are, the founder of basically kind of longevity research and information, and you're seeing these developments in our culture. I mean, what's that like?
Well, it's very disturbing. As I said, to see 10-year-olds, already with old age diabetes is very, very deflating and very upsetting. And we really do have to, end trans fats in the diet, end fructose. We've got to modify the amount of salt we eat. We've got to basically expand, as I've already said, the fruits and vegetables we eat. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've got to do it.
Right, and this is an area, too, that I think people are starting to realize parents have a lot of power. Parents can go to their schools and talk about, what they want their kids to be eating. Parents do the buying. They can just stop buying a lot of this stuff, the processed foods that is really poisoning, our kids.
But some parents, interestingly enough, are kind of intimidated by their own kids. The kid says, I want a hamburger, and mom gives in. So there has to be a real struggle here in which the parents begin to be the responsible people they should be and have to be.
Yes, we've actually got that with our little guy where, he's so tired of hearing about my health stuff that he's gone the other extreme. And we found that the best thing is kind of just trying to explain it, just trying to get him to understand it and knowing that some of these things are just treats. They're for great special occasions and not everyday eating. Now, do you see when you look at the population, are there certain age groups that you see are focusing more on longevity type activities that are being more successful, or what kind of trends?
A certain slice, not the totality of our baby boomers, but a certain percentage of our baby boomers have been health conscious. And then interestingly, as people get older, they often get very health conscious. Maybe because they see their life flitting away.
Right. That happened to me. At 40, I started to lose my health, and so I thought, well,
time to do something.
I better get health conscious or, be a couch potato, and it seemed easier to get health conscious.
Well, you're mentioning couch potatoes. It's an important opportunity for me to also mention exercise. Up to the moment, we've discussed nutrition.
Right.
Very, very important. But, energy in, that's food, and energy out, that's exercise. And you need to keep them in balance. And you could do that through, for example, I've always argued we should just have a national walking club. We don't have to spend money to go to an expensive health club if we all got out there as couples, as friends, as neighbors, and walked. It's very cheap. But not only do you need that aerobic activity, which means keeping your lungs and heart active, but you need to be concerned about your muscles, too. As you probably know, the number 12 cause of death in this country in people over 65 is falls. We need to do squats. We need to strengthen those thigh muscles. And we have to work on our balance so that we don't fall or reduce the chance of falling. So those are some of the physical things. There's more, of course, but there's much that I go into in my book, The Longevity Prescription, that has to do with physical fitness.
Right. And Dr. Butler, I also wanted to mention your website for people. It's a wonderful website. You have a fantastic PowerPoint on there about aging, some great tips on there. So what is your website for our listeners?
www.ilcusa, which stands for International Longevity Center, United States of America, .org. We're a nonprofit. And you can download whatever you want without any cost.
Great, and that had a lot of interesting information about aging on there. Another thing you talk about is decreasing stress, and for a lot of people right now, that's a real challenge. How do they do that?
It sure is. In the background, we see that oil going along the coastline. We worry about Iraq, and we worry about terrorism. And then we also have our multitasking. We have our cell phones. We have our computers. We sit around with the computer or the television set. We don't move. That all adds up to stress, and we've got to figure out how to reduce it. Now, what I do, and I'm not claiming this is appropriate for everybody, is I try to put aside what I call my peaceful time, maybe an hour a day, just to chill out, I guess young people would say, to just be quiet, maybe visualize things or meditate. For some people, I'm not in that category, but some people like to do Tai Chi or yoga. Anything that will distract one and give one a little peace and quiet, I think helps a lot against stress.
And why is that stress, and why is it so important?
Well, we even know it helps push aging along. There's a very interesting study by a Nobel Prize winner, a woman named Elizabeth Blackburn, who has developed a marker of longevity. At the cellular level, we know that with certain changes it relates to growing older. So she had two groups of mothers. One group who had children who were perfectly healthy. Another group of others that had children with chronic disease. And the comparison using her marker showed that those who had the chronically ill children aged more quickly. So it's a whale of an example of the impact of stress upon life expectancy.
And doing some of these anti-stress activities really does reduce the aging process?
Well, we think so. I mean, I try to be very careful in my book to not claim things that we don't have absolutely solid information. While we know that stress is not good for aging and for health, we don't know yet how much, by reducing it, how much that changes things for the better. That's more of what we think rather than what we know.
Right, Dr. Butler. And that's one of the things, too, that we really liked about the longevity prescription is, the subtitle in there is the 8 proven keys.
I try to only use what we are pretty 90% plus sure.
Right. And so I want to ask you that question. Why is there so much conflicting information? Is it that we don't know? I mean, let's talk a little bit about the anti-aging medicine. We've certainly interviewed many people on that topic. What's going on in the health field where it's just, so much information?
It takes money to conduct research. And to conduct good research, you need pretty large samples of people before you jump to conclusions. So science is always slower than we wish it to be. It accumulates by inches rather than by miles. So that's part of the problem. With respect to anti-aging medicine, I have some very concerns about that because some of the claims are a bit outrageous, like human growth hormone.
Right.
Because we know that there's a disease that occurs naturally in people called acromegaly, where you get big hands and big feet. And it's associated with high levels of human growth hormone. And if somebody has a cancer, let's say a prostate cancer that you don't know you have yet, if you're taking human growth hormone, you may be expediting that cancer. And we know in certain animal models that growth hormone in those animals actually shortens life rather than lengthens it. So I'm not enthusiastic about the use of human growth hormone.
Right. And so how did this get so popular? Is it just there's certain special interests that know how to market it or,
Well, part of it is knowing how to market. Part of it is this human yearning for a longer, healthier life.
Right.
People seem willing to do almost anything.
Right.
They may do it without really knowing the science.
Right. There was that movie. What was that? Shangri-La years ago. Do you remember that one?
That was a great movie. Yeah.
Kind of along those lines.
The oldest human document, the oldest in cuneiform tablet from the Sumerians, had to do with immortality. I mean, this is very ancient wish on the part of people not to die.
Right. Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And so you really have to be careful when you're trying these things, it sounds like, to really make sure you are doing, like you say, the proven keys.
Yeah. I'm not trying to put cold water on research. I was the founder of the National Institute on Aging, so I clearly am very pro-research, including learning more about human growth hormone and any other hormone.
Right.
I just think we have to be a little thoughtful before we rush into using certain things.
I assume you've studied a lot of cultures where they have longevity, that kind of thing, or you're well-versed in that?
Yeah, we have 13 centers around the world, the International Longevity Center. 4 of them in the developing world, for example, India, which, of course, is a marvelous place to study different cultural practices. Cape Town, University of Cape Town in South Africa. Brazil, Argentina. And then in the developed world, we have, of course, naturally, France, Great Britain, Japan, and Czech Republic, and Israel. And we can learn a lot about different cultural practices, different ideas that different medical practices pursue.
And so what are some of the universal things you're seeing in those cultures?
Well, the ones that I list in the Big 8, I think I could get pretty much agreement from all of the heads of my different centers around the world. They'd all agree on that Big 8. Now, they might have some for example, my Indian friends obviously feel strongly about various aspects of Hindu practice and meditation and breathing exercises. And to my mind, what they're talking about makes certain sense, but it fits into stress reduction. I think that we learn For example, sadly, in South Africa, a lack of attention by government to the problem of AIDS. That's being rectified now. But that was a terrible moment in South African history. Japan has quite a good healthcare system, as does France. France may have the best, actually. And there, interestingly enough, medical students get free education.
Wow.
In our country, where we have to pay, most of the students, on average, have $150,000 of debt by the time they leave medical school. So it's very tempting for them to go into a procedure specialty like cardiology or gastroenterology. All important, but they're not going into primary care medicine. That is taking care of ordinary people with ordinary problems. Europe, about 50% of doctors are primary care doctors, 50% are specialists. In this country, only 30% are in primary care. That's a serious problem in terms of prevention. And my book, of course, ultimately ends on the note we have to institute preventive measures.
And you've got to have a system where the doctors actually have the time to spend, because as we all know, these lifestyle changes take time and energy to implement. It's not an overnight cure like a pill would be.
Doctors today have literally about 12 minutes per patient. That's so different from when I grew up in medicine, when we used to really enjoy sitting down, getting to know a patient, carefully evaluating them, taking a long history, doing a careful physical. Now you're lucky if the doctor touches you.
Right.
He's going to use the technology.
The other thing you do address in the longevity prescription is how to implement these things to improve your life.
Well, that's, of course, that's where the tire hits the road. And, we've done pretty well on certain aspects of prevention. For example, half as many people smoke as they did in 1964. That's a big, huge step, 50% reduction. We also have seat belts in cars, which are now almost universal. So it is possible to introduce prevention. I think, for example, in our schools, the lunch hour should be a teaching hour, and the kids should be taught, what good food is and how they should learn to eat fruits and vegetables and not just pizza. I think we need to do a lot of teaching as part of our strategy to improve things. And then in our city of New York, our mayor actually ended trans fats in restaurants and smoking, and is now working on the high salt intake we have in this country. So it is possible for public servants and for private initiative and for nonprofits to work together to try to improve the health of the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting how impressionable kids are. I know my 7-year-old was watching the Jamie Oliver series, and we were over at the school the other day, and the little truck drove up with the processed lunches and things, and my son was so funny. He said, "Oh, there's the disgusting food arriving."
I love your son already. I've never met him. You should put him on the road.
Yeah, I think I'll just put him to work on activism. Yeah. I'll retire. That'd be good. So let's talk a little more about what things can people do if they're really wanting to make a difference in their lives and their children's lives. What are some of the steps that they can do?
Well, one of them, as I said, I'd like to see a national walking movement. I'd like to see people walk together. It doesn't cost money to do that. I like to see them take as one of their main exercises pushing themselves away from the dinner table. I like to see them deeply, profoundly control their alcohol intake, and certainly not to smoke. I like to see them seek a sense of purpose in life, something to get up for in the morning, because we know that's associated with a longer life and a quality life. I'd like to see them build more of a relationship among themselves. Here I think women do better than men. We men may have the old boy network and the stiff upper lip, but I don't think we're as good as you guys are in dealing with emotional issues.
Right.
And then I think we could do a lot more in our communities to be helpful through voluntary activities. That kind of community link builds social capital and seems also to advance health. So those are some of the things. Some of it takes some real work and real decision-making, but it's all basically doable.
Right, and that community is so important, and we didn't touch on that very much, but from what I've read, and we've interviewed Dr. Ornish on that,
sure.
Just that sense of love and community. And
absolutely.
It's difficult, but take your kids off of the video games for a while.
Well, that's one of the problems, isn't it? Maybe our kids, and I understand it. They get wedded to the TV, they get wedded to the computer.
Right.
But at some point, they really do have to look out after themselves.
And I do have friends that limit the viewing. They say you can have 1 hour a day, and that's it. And
parents get so intimidated. The kid says, I've got to see such and such. My friend so-and-so is watching such and such. We've got to stand up to our kids because we're doing it for them.
Right.
Not for ourselves.
Yeah, and those things are addictive from what I've read.
Very addictive.
So, Dr. Butler, you've written the longevity prescription. One of the things you say in there is, the importance of nutrition. And I just want to ask you also, one of the things we found at Wellness Talk Radio is there is so much conflicting information. We've interviewed so many different people. We've interviewed the low-fat people. We've interviewed the high-fat people, the vegetarians. We haven't really interviewed the carnivores yet. But what is all this confusion? Is there one diet that is optimal, or what? Kind of clarify this if you can.
I think the closest we've got is what is usually called the Mediterranean diet, which has high fruits, vegetables, low fat, fish, some meat, but more like condiments than big, huge helpings. You're absolutely right. There is a lot of confusion. And one of the things I tried to do, I hope with some success in this book, was to identify those keys that most people in most parts of the world agreed to. I didn't want to waste people's time with all sorts of uncertain theories. Mm-hmm. So I think this pretty much reflects the general opinion. I think most diets do agree you need lower calories.
Right.
I think most favor fruits and vegetables. So, and that's, of course, very close to Mediterranean diet.
Right, and you had and the Mediterranean does include the oils and things like that, and we've talked...
Olive oil, sure.
Right, we've talked to various professionals that really say you've got to be at a 10% fat level to really have the benefits. So that's getting pretty low, though, right? I mean... Yeah,
it is, but if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do. We really do want to have a quality life, not just a long life. Mm-hmm. We want to have our children grow up healthy. We need a productive economy. We kind of neglect the fact that even the character of our economy and our success as a nation depends upon healthy citizenry. And Lord knows the health costs are high enough, so anything we can do to promote good health also is a social benefaction.
Right. And if people are interested in finding out more, as I'm sure they will be, they can find the longevity prescription, the 8 proven keys to a long, healthy life. And Dr. Butler, we want to thank you so much for spending time with us at Wellness Talk Radio, and we really appreciate your time.
Well, you've been great. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Wellness Talk Radio. We hope you have a happy and healthy week.